coming up on today's show, we hope you're ready to talk about Final Fantasy. What's good, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the What's Good Games podcast, your source for video game news, commentary, analysis, and funny stuff every Friday. I'm Andrea Renee, joined by Miss Brittany Brombacher.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Brittany, and once again, it's Riana Manuel.
Hey.
Riana Manuel Pena. I'm sorry, it's gonna take
Pena.
it's gonna take me a couple weeks to get that flow
It's
down.
okay. It took me a couple weeks too. It's fine.
But congratulations again. It's been, what, 1 month now? 2 months. 2 months now?
2 months.
Oh,
2 months on the
time
23rd. Yep.
Man, that's awesome. Well, glad to
It
have you
is.
back. We have a fun show planned for you guys today. We're going to be talking about some hands-on stuff, and as I mentioned, some Final Fantasy. Just a little bit of Final Fantasy news happened. But before we get to that, thank you to this month's Patreon producers, Chewy's Godson, Alex Rigopulos, Faris Attieh, Justin Foshee, Matthew Goderre, and Punkdefied. And if you want to join our Patreon community, you can do so at patreon.com/whatsgoodgames, where you can get the show ad-free and support our voices in the podcast world. We also have a couple new podcast reviewers. So we always tell you guys every week, we love it when you leave us a 5-star review. If you don't have a couple bucks to throw our way, just a couple minutes of your time. And it warms our cold, cold hearts when we get to read some fun stuff. So Brittany, who do we got this week?
We do. Big shout out to BDM Reviews, who I admittedly, ladies, thought first said BDSM Reviews. And I was like,
Ooh.
hey, that's
Hey.
great. Should
Real
send
talk,
us a link.
I thought it said that too, not gonna lie. And I was like, oh, should we be reading this? Why not? You know,
Yeah.
it's fine.
We're not here to judge. But thank
Yeah.
you so much for the kind review, BDM Review. We appreciate you.
Yes, indeed. Now, let's enter the Final Fantasy Power Hour.
Oh God.
So for everybody who missed, wait, Brittany's very excited though. For everybody who missed it, Final Fantasy VII specifically was celebrating their 25th anniversary, and they had a big old stream where Square decided to just drop a ton of news, including a look at what we have been calling episode 2, which we will get to in just a second. But Brittany, I feel like I just have to pass the baton to you for you to just Final Fantasy educate me.
I'm
And
going to
me.
try. I'm going to try. Do we want to start with Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy XVI?
Your call.
Which one came first?
Final. I don't know how to answer this. I feel like Final Fantasy VII came first. So,
Okay.
I think we can start with that. Wow, Rhea, I love you so much. All right, let's talk about.
I never really know. Okay, I'm
But
sorry. They're
Ree, one's
confusing.
Final Fantasy 7, one's Final Fantasy 16.
But then there was a remake, and I played that.
That's fair. So when we're talking specifically about the remake, you are correct that it still came first because Final Fantasy 16 is not out yet.
Thank you.
Okay,
I know about video games.
you do.
Yes, you
Listen,
do.
You do. This is like me trying to talk Apex with you. Like, I just smile and nod and be like, yeah, I love that character. Anyway. Okay, so let's talk about Final Fantasy VII. So this all comes from IGN, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that's like come out about Final Fantasy VII, but we will just talk about it. I think this was last Thursday. Was that the showcase? 'Cause I feel like it was the day after we recorded. All right. First piece of news. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 comes out next winter. Now, I'll just say, I had very low expectations for the Square Enix showcase. I thought, we'd see a little something from Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, aka Rebirth. But, maybe a screenshot, a logo. No, we got footage and we got, a release window. We'll see if that actually sticks the landing here. But anyway, so Square Enix has revealed the first trailer for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. And it is officially called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Kingdom Hearts territory, ladies and gentlemen. It's just starting. Weird naming conventions begin. Revealed during Square Enix's 25th anniversary event for the original Final Fantasy VII, the second part in the company's planned multi-part series, will release next winter in 2023. I almost said next Wednesday. Rebirth appears to divert dramatically from the plot of Final Fantasy VII, where it was left off in Remake, in keeping with the ways in which Remake already indicated the sequence of events might not be the same as fans of the original remember. So in the trailer, we got to see a lot of Crisis Core Zack Fair, for instance, who was supposed to have died at the original Crisis Core, but was set up for an appearance during Remake. Okay, so that's like the first piece of news is we have Final Fantasy VII Remake, the one that we played, which replayed. You have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and we have a release date for next winter. There were some interviews that came out that said thanks to a new, I don't know how they called it, development way of developing. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. The development schedule. It sounds like they were able to get this bad boy out. And then the other piece of news is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion has been announced for this winter. But before I talk about that, Andrea is showing some footage at youtube.com/whatsgoodgames of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So the shtick with this game, I feel like we've been getting so many mixed signals from Square Enix. On one hand, it's like, yeah, we're going to stick to kind of like the main narrative, but we're going to do things a little differently. And then in the other, you get this trailer, which I feel like just sets the whole series up for a big what the fuck is going to happen. And what I thought was really interesting as well is let me get him, Tetsuya Nomura, obviously director of Final Fantasy VII Remake, who is the creative director on Rebirth, said this about Rebirth. He said, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is being designed so that people can enjoy this game, whether they know the original game or not. In fact, new players might even enjoy starting their Final Fantasy VII journey with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Cloud and his friends embark on a new journey in this game, and I believe that the scenes they witness after leaving Midgar will give players a fresh, new experience. I think that's incredibly interesting because obviously, like, Andrea played the first game. Reed, did you finish the first one, Remake?
I didn't finish it. I got about, I want to say, like 25, 30 hours in.
Okay.
That's a decent amount. I'd say that's probably like half. I guess it depends on how much exploring you did. I fell in love with that game. It was my game of the year in a complete surprise for me as somebody who has never really been engaged by Final Fantasy as a franchise. I just loved what they did with the combat. I loved what they did with the exploration and the hair animation, you guys. Can I just talk about how good they animated the hair in that game? Anyway, I could go on, but I've been very excited about what's happening for the sequel. Not having played the original, I know that, and Brittany, you'll probably get to this, that people seem to be having these theories about how they're going to change the story, going forward.
Yeah. And so because Nomura said, he feels like Rebirth could be a really great starting point for new players, if I think about it, that makes a lot of sense. I think what the first Final Fantasy Remake did is it just kind of set the foundation for obviously new fans and fans like myself, who have played the original and was really looking forward to seeing what Square did with that remake. But if you think about it, all it really did was just kind of set the foundation of, if you're a returning player, like, okay, so we're definitely going off the beaten path with this. But if you're a new player, it's just an intro to a 3-part series now. And so I think the real meat and potatoes of where the narrative is going to go is going to take place in this second game. I mean, that's really where I think the story really, really shines in Final Fantasy VII, is essentially what happens after you leave Midgar to, the death of a very important character. And, everyone knows what that death is, so I'm not like trying to spoil anything, ruin anyone's day, don't get mad at me. But as we're watching that footage, you are seeing Cloud and Sephiroth walking around, and that is the Nibelheim scene. I'm not going to get too in the weeds here because, bless my co-host heart, they haven't spent the time with Final Fantasy that I have. All you need to know is like the shit that we're seeing. It's definitely setting up for like, where the hell are they going with this? Like, where are they going to take this story? And I think the fact that we're seeing a lot of Zack is very exciting. And this also leads into the other announcement that Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion has been announced for this winter. Holy shit. Like, I think a lot of us were expecting, there's the rumors and whatnot. I thought we were all getting like a remaster of it. But oh no, we're getting a full-fledged remake. So this, again, comes from IGN. And their write-up is, this game is really real with Zack in all of his glory. So it's coming to Xbox Series X and S, PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC sometime this winter. Now, this game is a prequel to the original Final Fantasy VII, released for the PSP in 2008 in the West. The game gained unexpected new relevance when Final Fantasy VII Remake seemed to include a shot-for-shot remake of Crisis Core ending, but drastically changed its outcome, seemingly setting up for a prequel protagonist, Zack Fair, for an appearance in the main games. Now, I never played Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, or whatever the fuck it was actually. Yeah, I think it was Crisis Core. Final Fantasy, whatever. Again, we're getting to the Kingdom Hearts level of naming conventions here. Yeah, I can't keep up. But what's really exciting about this too is that this is, again, like the write-up said, this is a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. During our Final Fantasy VII remake spoiler cast, and God, that was 2020 with Steimer and Andrea, I really got to go into the weeds of the spoilers of that game and what Cloud's identity is and what he's dealing with and why certain things are such a big deal in Final Fantasy Remake Part 1. And this game dives into that whole story. It tells that whole story. I at least know that much. And so I'm really excited because I have not played this before. And so this is going to be a fun new way for me to experience this game. Otherwise, I really was contemplating like busting out the PSP and playing it on that. But no, I mean, I think this is just really great news. Obviously, it feels like the majority of my gaming life, everyone's been pining for Final Fantasy VII, a remake or like a retelling or something. And now I feel like we have so many Final Fantasy VII games are just coming out the ass. And it's lovely.
I think that it's smart of Square Enix to utilize the money that they dumped into creating this remaster, the world, the engine, the tools for the combat, all of that. Like, why not? If you've got the content, the audience is there. Clearly, Final Fantasy VII Remake did incredibly well for them and has had a huge fan base for a long time. So, I mean, yeah. I just, as a new person to the franchise, I'm just lost. I like have no idea what the heck's going on, what Crisis Core is, what like Rebirth is. I think that Square has always had a marketing problem. We poke fun at this a lot. You mentioned Kingdom Hearts, obviously also Square Enix. I think that they sometimes forget that for consumers who aren't deeply ingrained in the franchise, that it can be really daunting and really confusing. And it might be why they have struggled previously with some of their more Japanese-focused titles here in the West, with people who want to play but maybe don't know what to do. And now that we've really lost a lot of that in-person retail component that places like a GameStop or a Best Buy or even potentially like a Walmart and Target would have provided some context, maybe somebody in that department being like, oh, I can explain it to you. Let me help you, which really doesn't exist with the rise of digital distribution and how people are mostly buying their games online. I don't know how that's going to affect them, if it will. No, it's very possible that everyone else is just so much smarter than me and is like, this is so easy. Why don't you get it? Good for you. I'm happy for you. But I think that there's a lot of people out there like me who are now interested, who got into the franchise because of Remake, that are like, I don't know what to do or what to buy.
I'm with you. I really wish they would have just called it Remake Part 2 and like kept it there. I mean, if you look at the logo of Rebirth, there's the meteor that comes in between like the Final Fantasy and then the logo, right? And if you look, there's some red towards the bottom of the logo. And if you look at the way Rebirth comes across the screen, it's very reminiscent of a certain character's certain something. But again, like that's for people who are in the weeds, right? And then and you look at that and you're like, cool. But even I'm like Rebirth, like all I can think of is like a placenta. You know what I mean? Like I can't fucking like
that's the afterbirth.
I know, but that's why I'm like Rebirth, Afterbirth, whatever. Who fuck? It's all the same. But seriously, I'm not a really fan of this either. But then when it comes to Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, again, I go to reunion theory, which is like a really big thing in Final Fantasy VII and something you'll learn about probably in the next game. But again, I'm like, okay, which one is Rebirth? Which one is Reunion? What the hell is the third one going to be called? Like Redemption? I don't know. Revenge? I don't know if any of there are words out there. Let's go.
Revolution?
Revolution? Revelation?
Re-energize? Restart? Reset?
Reset? I don't know. Ridiculous? Who can say?
Final Fantasy
Ridiculous.
Remake ridiculous. I dare you, Square Enix. Do it.
Anyway, I'm just really happy to see Square Enix pumping these games out. I mean, as long as the quality stays up there, like, let's go. I mean, we have Rebirth. I already forgot the Reunion. And then we have Final Fantasy XVI, which we'll talk about here in a second. And, this just feels like maybe Square Enix has, their priorities straight. They have their shit under their feet, and they're able to put out quality games in a timely manner. Because I think about Final Fantasy 15, that came out 2016, 2015? That was a long-ass time ago. You know what I mean?
It was a while.
Yeah, and now we have these other games just coming out within the end of next year. So, exciting stuff. Yeah, I mean, not much else to say about it, but
So,
let's
Brittany, I
go.
have a question for you.
Yeah.
Of all of the Final Fantasies, and we're going to talk about 16 in a second, but why do you think 7 is the one that they're choosing to really go all in on, revamping it, remaking it, and like retelling these stories and even changing some of the narrative?
You know, when Final Fantasy VII first came out, I was never the biggest fan of it. I didn't actually play Final Fantasy VII from start to finish until maybe 2015 ish, because I needed a new treadmill game. I'm like, all right, I need to play this game. I need to figure out what the hype is. And going back on it, I don't know what the Final Fantasies were like really leading up to that because again, like I never played those. I really started my Final Fantasy journey with 7, and I did play the original one like back in the day, and I just recently played, I think it was Final Fantasy 4 on my 3DS, maybe in the last like 5 years or so, something like that. If I had to take a guess, I would say it was probably because it was one of the first Final Fantasies that really pushed maybe like the limits of the technology. You know, it's like that funny meme that goes around of like, oh, the video game girls are so hot, and it's like Samus and like on an SNES or something, or like Lara Croft's like tits like super like pointy. But maybe like looking at Cloud and Barrett and Tifa on PS1 graphics, maybe that was part of it. I mean, I'd be really curious to know if someone who really fell in love with this series at 7, if they could let us know. But for me, like, yeah, it never really did it for me. I think it was Cloud was just not a very likable character. The futuristic city landscape for me, like Midgar, that's why when Final Fantasy IX came around, which was more medieval in that Renaissance era, that's when I really got hooked. So, I don't really have an answer for you, but like that's just my personal experience. Is just from what I've heard, everyone thought Cloud was kind of like this cool badass. You have Barrett, fucking badass with a gun with an arm for an arm. Maybe it was like that macho shit back in the day.
Yeah,
Pissing all over anything marking your territory. Woof, woof.
lovely.
Alpha male. I don't know.
Excellent. Do you want to theorize about why it's now a 3-part trilogy, or is it just obvious that it's just a lot of game and they didn't want to cram it all into one?
Well, I mean, the first game was 3 discs, right? And while they're not, I don't know if they're following the discs because again, when I played this, I didn't have to actually change discs, but if I had to take a guess, it's probably that. I believe the disc 2 generally ends where, again, like Aerith's situation happens and then shit really hits the fan. But I'm not going to go into too many story spoilers. But if I had to take a guess, I think the way they're going to retell the story is just going to fit better into 3 parts. And I think there will be more of like a beginning, a middle, and an end for each part. Kind of like how the first one is like, okay, here's a conclusion, but we're definitely leaving you on a cliffhanger. And I think the second one will probably end the same way, where they're going to be more or less standalone experiences, but definitely will tie into the overarching narrative. That's just my guess. We'll see what they do. Maybe it's just all about money, Andrea. Who could say? Money and time constraints.
It's almost as if Square Enix needs some money to fund some projects that they have in Web3 since they sold some studios. We won't go down that road. Anywho, we're excited to play. I know I am. So we will obviously keep you guys posted when we get more details. But there was also more Final Fantasy news in the stream.
Oh, man. We got a lot of Final Fantasy news. Yeah, so today, which is Wednesday the 22nd, a whole bunch of interviews with producer Naoki Yoshida, producer of Final Fantasy XVI, has gone live. And we've learned a lot of new information about Final Fantasy XVI, which is like, okay, let's just tackle it all out. Just pile all the Final Fantasies on me. Like, let's go. I can handle it. Not really. I'm sleep deprived. Send help. Okay. So we did get the new trailer recently. I feel like it was a couple weeks ago, right? At the state of play, was it? No, it was the PlayStation showcase. I can't fucking remember. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We got Final Fantasy footage at some point. So anyway, here are my biggest takeaways. I've read a lot of the interviews from GameSpot and from IGN, and there's just some good tidbits of info in there. So I guess like the number one thing a lot of people are talking about is like, it's not going to be open world. And instead, Yoshida says Final Fantasy XVI will focus on area-based design in a manner that sounds similar to Pokemon Legends Arceus. Anyway, but while Final Fantasy won't be a traditional that was not a grunt pleasure, by the way. While Final Fantasy won't be a traditional open world game in itself, Yoshida does say that it will take a lot of inspiration from AAA open world RPGs, though he doesn't name any specifics. And he says, To bring a story that feels like it spans an entire globe and beyond, we decided to avoid an open world design that limits us to a single open world space and instead focus on an independent area-based game design that can give players a better feel of a truly global scale. Now, I know I grunted and discussed earlier, that's just because I'm a salty-ass bitch when it comes to Arceus, but I think this is a great design choice when it comes to Final Fantasy XVI. I personally love Final Fantasy 15. That was an open world. I know a lot of folks weren't the biggest fans of that. And hey, like, you know, you do you. We all have our opinions, you know, it's fine. But what I love about this is if this sounds like this is in favor of a more detailed, I guess areas is what you want to call them. Realms is what they are. Because we know there's going to be 6 different realms and you can like read all about them if you want to. But I feel like, you know, doing an open world is just, it was the hotness for a while. And maybe this is just me and my little echo chamber, aka talking to Andrea all the time, you know, new moms. But I just
We
feel
ain't
like,
got time for that.
yeah, we don't have time for that shit. Fucking so I'm sweaty, Betty. I've had shots of whiskey. It is hot up in this bitch, but I'm powering through. But we don't have time for it. Like you said, we don't. And I would rather have like much more like carefully constructed little sandboxes to play in rather than a big, barren open world that just feels void of life. I'm looking at you, Breath of the Wild. You know, so I think that's okay. Like, I think that's fine. I don't think the reaction to this is negative. I think it's mostly positive, but you know, it is one of those things that's kind of like, oh, interesting that you're not going open world. Cool. Next one. Clive will fight alongside others. This is just mostly a little fun little tidbit of info because in all the trailers we've seen, Clive is the main character, by the way. We haven't seen him fight alongside anyone, and that's really surprising. But listening to Yoshida, he did say that it's because they didn't want to basically like give us too much info for our peon brains. And so it's like, we're just going to like show a little bit of Clive combat, but of course he will be accompanied by one or more companions for most of his journey. They will participate in battle as well as trade banter with Clive. That said, the party members will be AI driven as to allow players to focus solely on controlling Clive. You know, if you've played Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you played Final Fantasy 15, I'm not sure if that's the level of AI that he's talking about, where like your party members will fight independently of you, and you can switch to them if you want to, you know, pull off some combo, or like if you desperately need to heal and the AI is like sucking ass and they're not healing you. But either way, like I love the idea of banter. To me, like that's what I loved about Final Fantasy 15's open worlds. As I was wandering around, you got to hear the banter between characters. But as long as it happens, I don't care how it happens. So not a huge surprise here, but nonetheless, it's nice to have it confirmed. Oh, this one. Icon. It looks like Akon, like the musician, but it's Icon. So it's spelled Eikon. Will fucking fight each other. Now, this was very exciting to me. So icons are summons. Now, every Final Fantasy game, I think everyone has a summon. They're called Guardian Forces in Final Fantasy VIII. They're called Eidolons in Final Fantasy IX, Aeons in Final Fantasy X, Astrals in Final Fantasy 15. Apparently in this one, they're now called icons. You do you, Square. I'm not going to judge you.
And just to interject for a second, it took me forever to figure out what the heck a summons was. When I first started playing JRPGs, everyone kept talking about summons, and I was like, I don't know what a summons is. And so for people out there, I feel you. If you are like me and you're like, I don't know what the heck a summons is.
These are the summons.
It's basically a super ability where you can call in a giant AI companion to fight for you.
Yeah, so you have Shiva, Ifrit, Rama, Leviathan, essentially these big, you almost think of them like as god type beings that you can summon. Only certain people can summon them. Shiva is ice, Ifrit is fire, Rama lightning, Leviathan water. So it's.
Are you taking notes, Rihanna?
I'm mentally noting all of this. Yes. I've used Ifrit in Final Fantasy VII or something similar, at least.
There you go.
Big ass fire dude.
Yeah, exactly. You're a fucking pro now. Look at you.
Yeah.
You're like the guru of Final Fantasy. But yeah, so what's really cool about this is that these icons will fight each other. And I thought this was really interesting because Yoshida said, icons appear in different situations and iterations. There's no one design concept that covers them all. Some will face Clive as fierce enemies. Some will be friends and come to Clive's aid. There will also be times where the player will control an icon in real time, battling other icons. The battle type and scale are fluid. Basically, and then he says, these varied types of fights can be action-oriented battles. Oh no, where'd my quote go? Oh, is it not in here? Oh, well, there's one in here about wrestling. Okay, well, I'll just swing it. But he said that it's essentially going to, it's a continuation of what I was reading. But essentially, the battles could be like a first person shooter type arena or like a professional wrestling match. And I
Okay.
just think that's the fucking wildest
Hmm.
shit ever. You tell me I can have Shiva and Leviathan like fucking mud wrestling in the middle of the world. Like, I'm all for that. Let's go. But I don't think we've ever seen the summons. I don't know if we've ever been able to control them. At least I never have been. So I think that's a really interesting new mechanic. And it says that he did say here it's one of the main selling points of Final Fantasy 16. Again, like, I'm nerding out. If you haven't played these games, you're probably like, what's the big fucking deal? It is a big fucking deal. I'm telling you, Susan. So piss off. All right.
Yeah,
Next
Susan.
one. No offense to any Susans out there listening. I love you. I'm sure you're a lovely human. Oh, and here's the other really exciting thing. Maybe confirmed banging. Okay, so producer Naoki
Ooh.
Yoshida also had this to say about the maturity of Final Fantasy 16 to GameSpot. He said, this time, to make sure that we could tell the story that we wanted it to and the way we wanted to, we decided to pursue a mature rating in most of the regions that will be releasing the game. But again, this is not because we basically, it's not necessarily we want to make it more violent or explicit. I fucking love this. I don't know about you ladies, but one of my biggest pet peeves is when you're playing a game and it's just and the narrative's so good, but they're so afraid to take it to that next level because they know if they do, they're gonna get an M rating on it, and then they're like, ah, shit, there goes like how many percentage of our audience. I don't know what the scoop is.
I don't feel like an M rating is as restrictive as it once was because it feels like, once again, because of the digital interface that a lot of people are buying games, there isn't that point where someone's asking you to take out your ID so that they can check what year you were born when you buy a video game. And I know that seems weird to even say out loud, but that's like something that happens in retail, right? Like they're mandated to enforce that. And when you buy games online, it's like age gates on trailers. They're just for show. They mean nothing.
Yeah, usually it's tied to your payment account, right? So if something's a PEGI 18 or M for ESRB rating, like most of the people buying the game will just have an account that has a card that is 18 or older, and it won't slow them down at all.
Yeah. No, agreed. Either way, let's do it. Let's tackle that mature content.
More
Let's, like,
banging.
go all the way in. More
Yeah.
Only in
let's see
some
fucking-
areas.
let's see
Only
some
some
nudity.
places.
Some places only banging in some places.
Yeah, right. It said in some of the areas you're allowed to have those more mature themes and that more mature content.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah,
there'll be
yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
safe zone, like a kid-friendly zone.
Yeah, I guess like fade to a black. I don't know. All I know is in my zone, I want to see the doinky doinky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh.
No curtain
The
flowing in the
doinky
wind for you.
doinky. I've never heard that euphemism before.
You know why?
It's a
'Cause
good
I
one.
just made it up.
I like it. I like it.
Doinky.
Let's make it a thing. Let's make it happen.
Doinky
here.
doinky, let's go. Let's all doinky doink. It's great. A few more other tidbits. The game will be, quote, a complete experience at launch, and there are currently no plans for other supporting content. This is such a relief. I don't know if you ladies remember a little game called Final Fantasy 15, which had like it had like 4 supportive post-launch DLC episodes.
That like
It was,
dramatically changed the storyline.
dude, oh my god. Yeah, episode Prompto, Glad, like it was ridiculous. There is then a prequel movie that came out. And then there was 3 or 4 additional DLCs that were scheduled to release, but got canceled because I think Square finally threw their arms in the air and they're like, fuck it. Like, just write this one. Like
They're like,
call
we
it a
can't
wash."
keep paying for this development. The burn rate's too high. Cancel.
Exactly. Oh, man. And I love Final Fantasy 15, so put your torches away. I loved that game so much. Alexa and I had many fun conversations about it. So I think it's really funny that they made sure to get this little piece of info in there. Like, don't worry, like you're gonna get a complete game at launch. Don't worry about fucking DLC 10 years post-launch. Anyway. And finally, players will follow the life of Clive through 3 stages: his teens, his 20s, and his 30s. Now, again, this is just a Brit thing. I fucking love time skips in games. Like, absolutely, it's one of my favorite things. I think of Breath of Fire. I think of Ocarina of Time. I just think of, there's another one. That was tip of my tongue. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I love Final Fantasy 15. Another great time skip. Oh, Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Fantastic time. I love that shit. So I love that we're following Clive through his youth into probably his troubled adulthood, because what would a Final Fantasy 9 or Final Fantasy game be without angst? So yeah. Anyway, like the TLDR is I would say I'm cautiously optimistic for this game, but I'm all in. I'm all fucking in. My hype level is there. It's I can't avoid it. I can't diminish it. I'm setting myself for absolute failure, but I don't fucking care. every time I see this game and I watch the trailers for, you know, like the latest trailer we just saw, I see something new. I get even more pumped for it. And I feel like Square, hopefully, is learning what they learned from Final Fantasy 15, applying it to this. And so far, it looks like they are. And I think we're really like setting ourselves up for something really special here. It's kind of like when we talked about Diablo last week. You know, everyone tries to do Diablo, but like no one does Diablo like Diablo. Same with thing with Final Fantasy. Granted, there's so many JRPGs out there, but there's just something homey and cozy about Final Fantasy that just can never be replicated unless it is done by Square. And so yeah, like I'm setting myself up for heartbreak, but I don't care. I'm just very thrilled and very excited for Final Fantasy 16. Hopefully we get it next year and it doesn't get pushed, but it sounds like for the most part development is very, very far along. It's just kind of coming down to polish. I know they need to still record some voice lines, but yeah.
Exciting.
And I also was multitasking and I Googled why was Final Fantasy VII so popular because Ria was bothering me. And the most up
Yes, it's the one I've heard the most about for sure,
no,
and not just
you're
because it was
absolutely
remade.
You're absolutely right. And you know what? My opinion doesn't mean shit when it comes to history. So here's what this person said, and it was the most upvoted comment. So 3D graphics for the role-playing game was like a big deal. The amount of FMG and CG and the quality of them for the time period, an identical protagonist, a black party member, there was a death of a party member, the use of bad language, weird situations,
Bad language.
emotions with the player, really cool gameplay mechanic with materia, minigames, chocobo racing, and snowboarding. So there you go. Sounds like
Lots
they
of
did a lot of
positives.
really cool, innovative things. Yeah, for the time. And that makes
Very
sense.
cool.
Yeah.
There you go.
All
All right.
Huge shit. That was great.
I feel like we need to get you a cigarette or something.
Just water. I'm sweaty. Otherwise, I take some more
Water,
whiskey.
certainly a healthier choice. All right. Well, we do have just a couple other quick news items that are not about Final Fantasy 7 or 16. PlayStation is reportedly skipping Gamescom in 2022. That, of course, is the summer. Just 2 months away now is when Gamescom is kicking off. Opening Night Live has been confirmed for a little bit now. This is not surprising. It feels like after we got a chance to talk to some publishers at Summer Game Fest Playdays that the general vibe I was getting is that people aren't quite ready to get back into the convention circuit, and that it feels like 2023 would be the first year that I think people are ready to come back in earnest. And maybe it is that some of these publishers and platform holders don't come back in the way that they were in the scene previously at all. Maybe they completely change how much they're spending and what they're showing, which is what I'm fully expecting to see. But Sony won't be there. I still am a little surprised that Gamescom is coming back like fully this year, because for people who aren't familiar or don't know, Gamescom is a behemoth of a show. It's routinely over 200,000 attendees. And because of COVID, of course, and this global pandemic that we've been in, it's been shut down and it's been digital. And I've been very grateful to be part of the Indie Arena booth. Ria and I got to host a diversity showcase the last 2 years on the live stream, which has been awesome. But I don't know if I would. I do know. I would not be okay with going to Gamescom this year. With the way that COVID seems to be kind of rearing its ugly head in these waves. We're currently in the middle of a wave here in the United States. I haven't checked with where Europe is at right now. It just seems like we're just not ready yet. That, you know, vaccinations just aren't where they would like to be according to the infectious disease experts. And the more stories I read about how dangerous reinfection can be, the more I'm like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to escape this? Are we ever going to be able to conglomerate in big groups ever again? I don't know, man.
I mean, adding to that, like the dev cycle is irreparably changed forever. Like people going home and working remotely to create games will never look like it did pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. And spinning up a vertical slice of a game for a bunch of people to play and test and potentially break live on stage is really hard. And as you said, really expensive. And it takes a lot of resources away from coming back from all of delays that everybody's already trying to overcome. And there is really no future where it looks like it did before. And obviously demos and trials will come back eventually, but studios and dev teams are still trying to work their way back to zero. Like they're still trying to get back onto their schedules and meet these calendars that they set 5-10 years ago in some cases. And it's going to take a couple more years before we see any sort of leveling out or return to normalcy. So I'm very surprised if anybody makes it happen. It's an absolute miracle. because it's really hard to come back from like just figuring out how to have meetings every week and moving straight to let's put a demo in front of 20,000 people.
Man.
Yeah. Or 200,000, you know. Potato,
Well,
right?
I really hope that it's safe. Like that's the biggest thing.
I mean,
200,000 is a terrifying number of gatherers.
I don't think we need to like belabor the fact that it's going to be unsafe. PAX East already demonstrated that no matter how safe you are, no matter how many safety precautions you take, that there's always going to be somebody at risk. I mean, and I know that that's just life. And even before COVID-19, these cons were always a hotbed of infectious diseases. Like PAX plague was a real thing, right? Even before COVID. So I just hope that people, you know, do what they can to stay safe. Wear a mask, you know, wear gloves, wash your hands, all that jazz. Do have fun, do go live your life, but, you know, be safe and be cautious of the other people around you if you are planning on going. And I do appreciate that Gamescom as a entity is also doing a digital event. They're making it a hybrids because they still want to obviously reach that global audience. And I'm still excited to see opening night live. I think Jeff has been doing some really interesting things with that stream for the last couple of years. And it obviously is a big stream leading into the holiday season. So we'll be watching and keeping an eye on it. Some other, in case you missed it, if you need an Xbox controller and spot one in the wild, you should maybe consider buying it because Microsoft has confirmed that Xbox controller shortages are happening across the globe, which is so sad to hear because they just put out that really cool video with all the new options that they're doing for their customization for their controller lab.
It's too hot. Too
I
many people want it.
I had to throw this in here because someone once saved my ass with the Nintendo Switch for my dad. So a couple of years ago, I got my dad a Switch, and I was putting it off, and then someone in some podcast I was listening to was like, hey, guess what? People are reporting Switch shortages, so if you want to get one, you should. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I went to Target, got one, and then it was the next week that you just like could not get them anymore. So, Susan, I know I gave you some shit earlier, but if you're still listening and you need that controller, pick it up, baby girl. Don't live with regrets. Get that controller.
Buy the controllers now before you can't get them
anymore. If
anymore.
it's not fucking toilet paper, it's controllers. I can't keep up in this world.
Supply chain woes are real. And now you can't get tampons in the United States. There's apparently a tampon shortage about to happen, or we're in the midst of. Yeah, I just like read about this. It's like, oh yeah, add it to the formula, the baby formula issue.
I can't get flea medicine for my dog. That's another thing I can't get now. It's sold out everywhere. I don't know what causes that, but hey.
Did we just get like too used to being able to get whatever we wanted, and now the manufacturing world is like, hey everybody, stop buying so much shit. Be happy with the things that are currently in your house and stop buying shit.
That's really hard to do.
This is the woman who got some fridge organizers delivered from Amazon today. Don't at me, okay? Listen.
Can you send me the link? Because I need some.
Yes. My beverages need to have their own bins, okay?
It's just so nice and satisfying when they roll out when you pull in.
Exactly.
You know?
My fridge can quickly become chaos, and that makes my mind chaos, and then I become chaos, and nobody wants that.
Here to kill chaos.
And I just wanted to throw this last little story in because it makes me so happy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Would you like to, is there something that you would like to share with the group?
It's about chaos.
Maybe. It's like chaos. We're here to kill chaos. Remember Alexa?
Yes.
Chaos likes my pants. It's just chaos. Andrea's chaos. Holy shit. Oh my god.
It's me, chaos.
Chaos. Nice pants. Chaos. Oh god. Losing your mind.
Oh my
That's all.
goodness.
I need to get that out. You may continue with the show, Andrea.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I want to give a big shout out to the hashtagonist, longtime supporter of What's Good Games. Wow, I'm so happy for you. Finally, after a decade of waiting, Dragon's Dogma 2 is finally announced. Yay!
You got it, friend.
Why they didn't do this during one of the press conferences, including Capcom's own showcase, I do not know. Instead, what they did is they announced it during a 10-year anniversary live stream. And I think a 10-year anniversary live stream would have been a great place to talk more about the development of the game, why it's taken 10 years, have like a developer diary type of thing. But the razzle-dazzle splashy logo moment should have happened during their showcase or during opening night live, or excuse me, during the Summer Games Fest stream. Like, why not? I don't get it.
My nose,
and now I feel like the story just got lost. last week, especially in the wake of all the Final Fantasy news that happened on the same day. Sorry, Dragon's Dogma. Everyone was talking Final Fantasy. Wow, I'm so happy for you. He's a big fan of this game. And when I worked at Machinima, when Dragon's Dogma originally came out, there was a big contingent of Dragon's Dogma fans, this RPG that this group of guys that I worked with was just obsessed with it. They were just like, it's so good. Everyone needs to play it. And I actually, at the time, never ended up playing it because I was like, I ain't got time for RPGs. Because I was playing Halo or something. Halo 4. That was what was out then. But anyway, I want to go back and play it. I know that they did a remaster, and I think that it's great that they're finally working on it.
Yeah,
congrats.
It's on the Switch, and I played maybe like 10 hours or so back in the day because I wanted to experience what WoW was experiencing, and it was fun. I don't know what happened. I got distracted with something, but good job, WoW. Now I need my moment. I got my Resident Evil 2 remake. Now I need my Earthbound. I need my Ocarina of Time remake. Let's make it happen, so I can have my moment like WoW did.
We will keep our fingers crossed for you, Brittany.
Like, Ree, what's your moment?
Jade Empire.
Okay, that's right.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Remade authentically, maybe with a little bit more
Something
representation in the creator side. But, absolutely, Jade Empire is one of my favorite BioWare games of all time.
Got it. Andrea, what's yours?
I was just thinking about this. I was like, do I have one? I don't know if I have like a legacy game because I don't know if we've ever like deeply talked about the fact that I had this gap in my video game playing life where when I graduated high school and went to college, I brought my N64 with me, not to date myself. But all I really did was play Mario 64, even though that's when I had my PS2 with my GTA Vice City save. But that's when everybody was playing Halo on the original Xbox and doing Halo LAN parties. And I just stopped playing video games in college. Just did not have time, had internships and was working and was going to school. And then when I wasn't doing those things, I was at parties like a lot of college kids were, or traveling or whatnot. And I just stopped playing games in earnest. I played a little bit from here and there, but I wasn't buying the new thing, reading about the new thing. And it wasn't until I graduated and moved to Los Angeles to pursue my on-camera career that I started getting back into games with the Xbox 360 and the Wii of all consoles. And that's when
It's a good console.
Yeah, it's one of the best consoles. And so I really got back into video game playing as what they call the hardcore. You're playing more than 30 hours a week or whatever. After I graduated. So there was this whole period of video games that I just kind of missed. And I've been slowly over the years going back and playing some legacy stuff. So to answer your question, if I had to pick something, even though it's not that old, a game that I really love that I think would be amazing in a remaster or a remake would be the original BioShock.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
I think that game absolutely stands up as it is, and I know that they remastered it for the BioShock collection that came out. But I think that if they remade it, completely redid it for a modern audience with updated control schemes and really beautiful Unreal 5 graphics on these new consoles, it could be really phenomenal. And it would bring, I think, a whole new world of people into what I argue is one of the best games of all time and one of the most influential games ever created. So,
okay, so
absolutely.
we got BioShock, we got Jade Empire, and then we got Mother 3, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and Final Fantasy IX.
Just a short list for Brittany. Just a short
list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally doable. Just make it happen. Industry.
It's fine. Making games is so easy. I don't know what these lazy developers are doing. My God, get off
Control
your asses.
save as _new.
And it's so cheap too. What are they even complaining about? It's it costs money or something.
God.
Anyway, let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what we've been playing, including a hands-on from Summer Game Fest Playdays. With some B-roll of Rihanna and I actually playing a video game, everybody. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. This is the second segment of the What's Good Games podcast, where we talk about what we've been playing and any preview events that we've been to. And guess what? We've got both this week. But before we do that, Brittany and I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of our wonderful patrons at patreon.com/whatsgoodgames. We have an amazing group of people who support us at the level where you get a shout out on the show. And it's been one of our favorite things to do, to call out all these wonderful people and see these names who have been supporting us, many of them since the beginning. And we got some new names in this month as well. So this will be fun. Brittany, are you ready to read some names?
I am so ready, Andrea.
All right, let's do this. Fargo Brady.
Ryan Stoffel.
Jake Finney.
Nathaniel Edison.
Bill Rosas.
Tyler Adams.
Erskine James.
Casual Blasphemy.
Trick 24.
John Little.
Omega 3.
Jason Look.
Jeffrey Rogers.
Oh boy. Maroon Danoon.
Daniel
Right.
Hull.
Eric Z.
Draco's 3442.
Chewy's Godson.
Mick the Nanobiologist Abramson.
Exis Auditors.
Tara Bruno.
Trent Barry.
Sean I.
Elizabeth Douglas.
Brian R. Johnston.
Justin Foshee.
Patrick Landry.
Punkdefied.
Rob Leonard.
Patrick Higgins.
Kenneth Stimmel.
Trent Pennington.
Emily Kent.
Faris Attieh.
Jessica Bloom.
Patrick Wallace.
Matthew Goderre.
Noel Navarrete.
Chris Wegg.
Tyler McCall.
Joe Wilson.
McCall. Devin Nitz.
Adrian Rock Williams.
Shai Jackson Burgess.
Renat Burns.
Giselle Baza.
Gary Peck.
Dale Sun.
Robert F. Fremering.
Carol Melanie.
Marcus Ian Brown.
Pete Shoemaker.
Bill Stillwell.
Teresa Ayana.
Jason Dinez.
Alex Rigopulos.
Andrew Cotton.
David Akalucci.
Elmo Shell.
Gio Carsey.
Molly Bittner.
Azim here.
Nicole Humphrey.
Stephanie Fitzwilliam.
And the one and only John Drake. Love you, sweetie.
Last
Thanks for
but
supporting the
not
show. I
least.
appreciate you. We appreciate all of you. So many of you have been with us and part of our Patreon community for a long time. So thank you so much for your continued support, and welcome to everybody who has just joined us. We are excited for you to be here. Now, shall we talk about some video games? What do you say?
I say yeah.
Excellent. I love that we actually got to go hands-on with a game, and we didn't talk about it last week because last week's show was a very big show. And thank you again to Emily for coming by the studio. It was really fun to have her. But Riana and I had the opportunity to sit down and play a co-op session of Warhammer 40K Darktide with Ryan and Destin from IGN. And it was a really fun opportunity. And thank you again to the folks at Tencent and Fat Shark for fitting us into their schedule. When I saw that they were going to be doing some hands-on at the event, I was like, ooh, I've been wanting to play, especially since, Britt, I know you have spent a little time in the Warhammer universe, but I really haven't played like any Warhammer.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of Vermintide, dabbled in Vermintide 2 a bit, but Jason and I really liked Vermintide a lot. And so we have our eyes on Darktide, and I'm very excited to hear what you ladies thought.
Well, Riana, before we dive in, just give me your kind of high-level impressions. Like when you left the demo session, you were like,
Yay.
cool.
I'm trying to think of like the shortest version of it. Yeah, I had a good time.
Short.
I would
That's
say
very short.
that's the short version. That was fun. I want to do more of that.
Well, great. I mean, honestly, that's the best feedback I think anybody could get. I want to do more of that. So
Yeah.
over at IGN.com, Ryan McCaffrey writes, Warhammer 40K Darktide is actually coming out on September 13th, making it one of the few next-gen Xbox exclusives that Series X owners have to look forward to this fall. As such, it is quite likely to benefit from the extra attention from Xbox gamers starved for fresh content. He said it. We all were thinking of it. After playing through one of this Warhammer meets Left 4 Dead mashup's dozen 4-play co-op missions, I'm pleased to report that Darktide looks to be both worthy of that attention and approachable to players both familiar with and new to Warhammer and anyone who's played Vermintide 2. So just to set the stage a little bit for what we played, the mission that we played took around 30 minutes to complete and was set in a tank factory. Though the developers at Fat Shark told us that most of the missions are set in different areas of the hive, allowing for plenty of environmental variety. The Fantasy Kiss steel mill look served this stage well, thanks to the impressive texture detail, distinct player character models, and frame rate that held 60 on the PC build I played, even as hordes of monsters poured into the combat encounter. So Britt mentions that because Vermintide 2 had some issues.
Oh man, and that was the reason why we couldn't play it, is because we got way too dizzy. You would turn and it'd be like chug, 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 chug. And as you ladies know, in that kind of game, you need to be able to turn on a dime smoothly and seamlessly. But we both got very, very dizzy and kind of nauseous from it. So we had to sadly stop. So that is like the best news. And that was like literally my number one question. So woohoo! So we got to record some footage, and full disclaimer from both myself and Rihanna, we were playing on mouse and keyboard, or as KBM, as Destin called it. We were like, oh, we're not one of the cool kids that calls it KBM. And so Rihanna bravely volunteered to have her footage recorded. And so we have some gameplay that was provided to us by the team at Fat Shark. So I'm going to show that to you guys right now. And it looked good. It played really smooth. It was really fun. Obviously, whenever you approach a demo situation when you're playing a game pre-release like this, it takes a little bit of time to get used to the control scheme and what your character abilities can do. And the class that I sat down at, and like I didn't intentionally pick this class, but I got to play as the new class, the Psyker, which the devs were like, oh yeah, that's the hardest class to learn. I'm like, cool, no problem. But it's an interesting class because I have this ability to essentially use this energy, but if I don't discharge the energy periodically, it can build up and then make me explode, which is not
so I can read off the four classes that the four of us played as really quickly. And I think what we're seeing now is, after I maybe passed away, one of the other characters that I did not play as. But first we have the Zealot, which is an inquisitorial acolyte type with a bowl cut, a power hammer, and a scroll down their front. This is from wargamer.com. The veteran, who I originally started playing as, is an Imperial Guard stormtrooper with gas mask and a laser gun. That was a sniper class. The Ogren, which is toting a massive slug gun and a cutlass, that is a pretty badass sword. That was really fun to watch. And then, as Andrea said, the Psyker is described as a hooded, warp-powered Psyker who needs no equipment. Their mind is their weapon. And it sounds like maybe even your weapon against yourself sometimes when you accidentally blow yourself up. So I think what we're seeing right now, and you can check this out at youtube.com/whatsitgames, is the gameplay of the Zealot, who has a big, huge power hammer, which is a great melee weapon. And if you're not familiar with Warhammer Darktide or Warhammer in general, lots of melee opportunities because you are constantly assaulted by many, many enemies. And Brittany, again, it did not chug. It did not get held up. It did not start giving us vertigo or cutting or lagging or anything like that. And there were many, many enemies on the screen most of the time.
That makes me so happy. So it sounds like this is mostly wave based. Are you trying to go from like point A to point B? Like how is okay.
Yeah, so you're going from point A to point B. You have many objectives along the way, and of course, a couple of moments where you can stop, catch your breath. You can put down health packs or ammo packs for your other teammates, depending on what you have collected throughout your journey, if you've been looting correctly. Or they have like little health stations or little ammo stations along the way you could fill up, because you will absolutely run out of health and you'll absolutely run out of ammo, which is why melee becomes so crucial. And with the hammer, and then obviously the cutlass, and maybe just exploding yourself onto people. But what's really great about what we played, at least, is the pacing. And Andrea, I'd be curious to hear how you felt it was. I, of course, as I said, maybe passed away. However, I did feel like it was really great in the pacing of, I felt like I had enough time to figure out what I wanted to do in each section of our map and of our progress. I had opportunities to use my sniper. I had opportunities to get up close and melee. I had opportunities to help pick people up or help heal people. Maybe somebody helped me pick me up once or twice too. But it did feel like I got to use sort of every part of the combat design in each mini encounter. And it did feel like a complete experience, even though I maybe wasn't as successful as other people.
I think the interesting part about our gameplay experience that I thought I wish that was a little different was the revive process for you. So after Ree's character went down, I mean, you have an ability, you have the option, I think, to do like a quick revive. But if you fail at that, then they go into like a downed but out, or no, like a full like out state. But we can come back and save you and like essentially like bring you back at a different part of the level. But then we have to get to that part of the level without that person, and it just takes a little bit longer because there's a lot of enemies, as you guys saw in some of this B-roll. So I do like the kind of way that you described it as being this kind of complete experience. I like the mission and the level design felt really good. We did get lost at one point of the map, and the dev had to come over and be like, you guys are going the wrong way, because obviously, you know, having not spent any time with this demo, we weren't familiar with the map or the location at all. And these hordes, which you're seeing on screen, just can overwhelm you at any point. And so when we were playing, the devs made sure to say to us, like, hey, like, you guys really need to stick together. If somebody attempts to like become like a lone wolf or tries to go out on their own, like, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to be able to fight them off by yourself, which I think is, you know, a really important thing to remember when you're playing a co-op game. Because I think sometimes when we're playing co-op with our friends in a wave-based game like this, is that you're like, I'll be fine. But even Ryan, who was playing the Ogren, the tank character, who Brittany, I think you will love, easily got swarmed and overwhelmed and couldn't. You can see him there in the front. I think this is Destin's gameplay, maybe.
I think so.
That we're seeing, which is totally fine because, like, let's be clear, like, he was the most experienced of all of us that were playing this demo. But it was really interesting, kind of seeing how our abilities work together, and we were just kind of getting the hang of it towards the end of the demo. But it was a lot of fun, and there was a nice mix of gameplay that felt like Rihanna was saying, like, that was like melee focus and up close when you're really like surrounded by these hordes. And then I had an ability with essentially with like a staff. It almost felt like a wizard staff, where I could shoot projectiles of this like psychic energy that I have that made it a nice like ranged. So it was like a magic ranged character essentially, which is like almost all the characters that I play when I play these types of games, which I love. But then, you know, you're a little bit like glass cannon-y in some ways, and so you have to really be careful about managing your energy load and when you're going to use it, because what's cool is this energy that you're building up, and there wasn't a capture station on my character, which is why I can't show any of that gameplay to you guys, but the energy you're building up, you can discharge it, and it kind of sends out like a shockwave explosion, which is really good when you're surrounded by like these hordes of enemies. But as I mentioned, if you don't manage that meter, you can go boom boom, and that's no fun.
So how often did you go boom boom?
I didn't, actually.
Okay. So you were good at the meter.
Yeah. So the thing I want to, you know, also remind people that, you know, maybe aren't watching or just listening on the podcast, you don't necessarily see it on the gameplay that we're showing you guys here, but on my gameplay, there is like a very much a visual aura effect that happens in the HUD that reminds you, like, hey, like, you are approaching critical energy levels. Like, if you don't discharge this energy, like, you will, like, something bad's gonna happen. Almost like when you're really low health in some games, you know, you get like a red splatter or a red I don't know, aura that goes around the outside of the screen to be like, yo, you're dying. Did you not notice that you're fucking dying? So it's kind of like that. But once he told me, like, hey, you have to manage this meter, I just made it part of, you know, me managing the HUD. But I can see how you could forget to manage it when you get overwhelmed with enemies. You just stop noticing.
So it sounds like there's no real, going back to something you were saying earlier, because I'm thinking about some of my like qualms with the earlier games. It sounds like there's no real directional anything. You don't really know where you're supposed to go. And are you chasing hordes? Because if you find a horde, does that mean you're on the right track, or do the hordes respawn?
No, there's definitely like markers in the levels to like where to go. But I think, you know, the way that the map looks versus how you traverse through the level is always going to be a little bit different. Like, there's very few video games, I think, that have like a 1-to-1, like, oh, the map is very clear about where you're supposed to go. And I think also with the verticality of this mine level that we're in, it was kind of sometimes just tough to know like where we're supposed to go. So we kind of like retreaded a little bit, but we definitely knew like what we were supposed to be doing in the level. It just was a little, we got lost sometimes.
Yeah.
And
It was our first time.
did they show you like a central hub, like where you would go after each level, or was it like you play the
No.
level and that's it? Oh, okay.
No, we didn't really get to spend any time in there. But I think that's just because we had such a short demo and they just really wanted to showcase some of the combat with these characters and how the co-op played together, which I absolutely understand. And that's fine. We'll see more of this game. Obviously, it got delayed. It was originally supposed to be coming out last year, and now they said that they're locked for this September. I think that it's gonna be fun. I'm excited to play more of it, and I'm definitely excited to play more of it with a controller.
Yeah, and I'm actually really excited to see some more of the depth of gameplay and of the customization. Something that we heard from one of the devs after our time hands-on. And this is, of course, all subject to change as they're in the final stages of figuring out the full release set of features. But you can move guns between different characters. Like you're not necessarily locked into any one particular type of weapons loadout as the class type. And you can put different attributes on different weapons to make them a little bit different. Like let's say I really like my laser gun, but I want to use it up close. Maybe I take the sight off and put something else like that'll make it a bit more of a spread on it because I just like the fire pattern. There seems to be a huge focus on customization and making that character feel like yours. And there isn't necessarily a requirement to run through with one of each character class. You can maybe run with all 4 ogres if you're really feeling super frisky and you want to just go in and swing a bunch of hammers around. So there's definitely a lot of room for making it feel like your own and really making it fit your play style, which is super encouraging. And obviously will encourage that repeated play of going back and unlocking a new attachment or unlocking a new attribute for a weapon that you really, really love and figuring out how you want to make that suit your next play style run and truly customizing your character to the way you want to play. And to your question about are there enemies that spawn behind you? It seemed like yes, but less frequently. And my character class actually had a secondary power where I can shoot out a scan and see where any enemies are and however much of a radius, and all of the co-op players can also see that scan. And it's definitely a good way to figure out where you need to go because you'll see the enemies grouped in your next objective. So it does communicate it to you a little bit with how many enemies are spawning. But if you're taking a little bit of time and dragging, they'll maybe throw a couple at you.
I mean, I definitely felt like I got overwhelmed with enemies from all sides. You can kind of tell from some of the B-roll that we're showing again at youtube.com/whatsgoodgames. Thanks again to our pals Ryan and Dustin for playing with us and kind of carrying us a little bit. That, the design of this level is like there's kind of hordes coming from all directions. And one of the things I didn't mention about the character that I was playing is I have this really fun special that is great for some of the shielded or heavily armored enemies that allows me to, not me, but the character, to kind of use some of this energy that you have where I can essentially like go into this like animation where I can make their head explode. Which is really helpful when you have armored enemies that you can't like hit with like a sword or with bullets. But the animation is slow, so it makes me very vulnerable, but it's really powerful when I can, actually execute it. I wish I had B-roll of it, but I don't. That's my character there running in the world. I wonder if maybe I can. Yeah, I guess we didn't really slow down to like take good B-roll of what the characters all look like. We were just like, go shoot and kill the things.
It was kind of impossible to take a second, honestly.
The combat looks really fun. Like I'm eyeing this huge ass hammer and I just want to swing that bitch.
Yeah, but you see this enemy that he was just fighting with this giant shield. So I eventually took this guy down by making his head explode from a distance. Because you can see, like, hitting him straight on with the hammer is not really successful because he's got a big old shield. But it's really an interesting, like, set of diverse enemies all coming at you with different kinds of weapons, both with guns and with melee. And it was fun. It was just like a lot of fun to play. And I was really sad when they were like, all right, your time is up. And we were like, no.
We did get to the end, though. We did technically finish it, even though I
That's
was
true.
imprisoned and waiting for my rescue.
Yes. I'm sorry. We
Aw.
tried
I
to
would have
get
rescued
there.
you, Ree.
I wish that they would have just like, I know that it's like part of the gameplay experience, but I was like, we're doing a press demo. Can you just like
Give us God mode.
Yes, exactly. Come in with your God mode developer magic key or whatever, and let her just like be in like no jail mode or whatever. I don't know.
I was just hanging out with my captors, like, hey, what's up? Yeah.
There was
You
just
like five
these
gum?
two
I don't
dudes
know.
that were like guarding her, and she was like, "Be careful, there's some guys." And we were like, "Did you get to see the 100 dudes that we just took down back there? We're good." It's like 100 people chasing us. Meanwhile, she's like, "But there's 2 here." I appreciated the warning though. It was,
Yeah.
considerate of you.
Just making sure you can handle it, Yes.
Yes.
2 randos just watching me on my knees.
Ooh,
It's important though. Important.
you should get paid for that, Ree.
Unfortunately, no.
Hey.
So I just was able to get the other file pulled up here, and I want to just check and see if this is your footage. I think it is. Let me see. I think this is you. Isn't this you?
I had sort of like a sword gun, like a
Yeah, that looks like
chainsaw
that.
gun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could like rev it up, Gears of War style and like chainsaw somebody,
Oh my,
or I
that
could
is
switch to
so
my
many
sniper.
enemies.
Right?
It's a lot.
It's
It's
too
a
many
whole lot.
enemies.
Did
Um,
they say that scales depending on the amount of players you have? Or is it
don't
like you
think we
have to play with a
asked.
party of 4 with AI?
There's the chainsaw.
Oh, that
yeah.
was sick.
That's
You know,
fun.
I think we asked them, but I don't remember if I actually wrote it down like a good
That's
journalist or
okay.
not. Sorry.
It's A-okay. Nah, girl. I'm just keeping the combo flowing like a river.
Oh yeah, so I think the gameplay that we were just showing you guys was in fact not Destin's gameplay, but was like developer gameplay, and this is the actual footage of us playing together.
Of course, that was too good to be Destin.
I mean,
Destin.
we gave him a
Come
lot
on.
of credit though, so take it for what it's worth, Destin.
I believe he could be that good. Is that complimentary?
There you go. What the fuck is that?
So this
thing?
is showing you a health revive station where
Oh,
you can,
wow.
refill. This is one of those rare respites in the pacing. And as I was saying, you do get a couple, but they don't last long, as you can see.
Yeah, and don't worry, there is no friendly fire. That was the first thing that I was like, excuse me, we're shooting each other a lot. There's no friendly fire, right? And they're like, no. They're like, we contemplated it for some of the higher difficulties, but we were like, this feels like with the chaos of the mobs that come through, they were like, that just feels like not fun. And I was
Yeah.
like, you were right. It
Mhm.
isn't fun. Friendly fire is literally never fun in any game. Developers stop making it a thing.
Yep, thank you.
Just don't do it.
Just don't do it. Yeah, just don't do it. So, but yeah, this is Ree running around with her weird sword
My weird
gun thing.
Chainsaw gun.
It's
Wow.
great. It's great.
That is a cool gun.
It was pretty fun. And again, super smooth, looks great. We're really responsive. I'm really looking forward to playing again.
Sweet. Looks like a nice little adrenaline boost.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you again to Fat Shark and to Tencent Level Infinite, I should say, for letting us play. And we'll hopefully all be able to play again in a couple months when the game comes out. So another game that we've been playing, and it looks like all of us have played at least a little bit of it. Yes?
Yeah.
Is Diablo Immortal. So this is a game that was very poo-pooed when it was announced at BlizzCon. I think y'all remember when that very uncouth and rude person got up at the Q&A and was just like, this game sucks, or whatever he said. Anyway, when Diablo Immortal was announced as a mobile game, Blizzard fans were mad. But this game is pretty good, I think. And now I haven't played to where I've really hit the paywalls because it's clear that there's a lot of microtransactions built into this game, which I think people have capital O opinions about, which is fair.
Mhm, very fair.
And I have always been of the mind that if they are not intrusive and are cosmetics based, then, it's fine for them to keep making money. But I also would rather just pay money for a game and not have roadblocks from a bazillion different kinds of economies that are built in to try to milk me for money all along the way. Now, I haven't gotten to that point in Diablo yet. Have either of you?
Oh no,
I
I
have
did not get
not.
anywhere near.
I also, speaking of that, saw an article that said Diablo Immortal has earned $24 million in 2 weeks.
Good for them.
And
Not
that's
shabby.
not bad, God, that's I strive for what's good to make 24 million in 2 weeks.
The dream. The
The
dream.
dream. Yeah, no, I haven't I mean, I'm with you. I think, not to kick a dead horse, I was never really poo-pooey on Diablo Immortal. I think where that whole thing went south was the way it was announced, especially when everyone was clearly looking forward to Diablo 4. But I've always been looking forward to it. I love Diablo, and I think, mobile is a good fit for that genre, that game, if you will.
Yeah.
And so we started playing it when we were in Maui on our vacation a couple weeks back. I couldn't get it to work on my iPad for some reason, so we're playing it on our iPhones. And like the two of you, I'm not at a point yet where I'm like, oh, I need to start paying for this. I mean, so far I've been having, a really good time. It feels like a very obviously simplified version of Diablo. It has all of the elements that you'd expect. I mean, you have your loot, you have your upgrading, you have your what's it called when you take your gear and you break it down to the blacksmith and you get gear.
Crafting?
Thank you. Crafting. You have all that stuff. My brain. You have all the things in it. You have all the fun abilities. I'm playing as a barbarian, so I have my cool little whirly-do attack that I love so much. I think the voice acting in it is great. I think the story in it is fun and engaging. Like, I really have nothing negative to say about it right now. Obviously, if this was Diablo 4, that'd be a different story. But because it is a mobile game, I think I have the proper expectations. And so far, I haven't really been disappointed. That said, I haven't played in a week or so just because, I try to stay off my phone as much as possible. But it's been a fun time, and I have really no complaints with it. We actually bought some dongles so we can play it on our TVs with our Xbox controllers. And despite like the little bit like half-second lag, it worked really well, and we had a lot of fun playing it that way. But yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of mixed opinions on this. Obviously, I think Ree, you have some different opinions than what Andrea and I have. So I'm excited to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that people enjoy Diablo Immortal.
Cut the bullshit, baby girl. Come on.
Oh, she's got some shade. Come on, bring it.
Now, I'm sorry, I have to throw some shade.
Don't be sorry.
I have a 1.5-year-old phone. It's a Samsung, what is it, S20 Galaxy, what have you. I thought I had plenty of space on my phone. Diablo Immortal would like to differ. I tried installing it, had to delete lots of things, including even like some wedding videos, which of course I backed up to the cloud first. Okay. They aren't lost. But I had to move a lot of stuff to make room for the base game. I booted up the game, went through the tutorial, which took time, created my character, which was fun, and then started trying to figure out how to play with our friends. And it told me I did not have all of the content downloaded yet. And then it also told me that I had to restart the entire experience on the server that they were playing on.
Yeah.
And I had lost all of that time and energy and, game playing effort and had to start from zero. I immediately deleted it off my phone. It became very clear that this experience would take away my ability to use my phone for the things I need to do, which is recording things, sharing things, all of the things that I do on my phone. And I edit on my phone as well. So it just wasn't a good user experience. And then the fact that I did not know I needed to be on the same server as my friends before I started, huge roadblock for me.
There should be a big old disclaimer.
The biggest flag ever.
Yeah, I agree.
It could have been hours.
Yeah. I'm with you that it shouldn't be hidden how much space it's going to take. I mean, at least it's a free game, and it's not like you spent money to pay to put it on your phone, only to be like, whoa, I can't keep this on my phone. It's way too large. For people who are like, how big is the game? On Android devices, it's 2.4 gigabytes required to download and install the base game, plus an additional 10 gigabytes is needed for patching post-installation. So that I didn't realize was that many gigs. And this could probably just be me having paid for a giant phone because I record so much stuff for my job, but you are representing the mass majority of people who are like, I don't use my phone to play video games. I don't need a ton of space, and most video games on phones are, a couple hundred megabytes at most. For reference, on iOS devices, it's 3.3 gigs required to download the base game. So bigger, but it's 9.5 for patching post-installation. So they're essentially the same size. But I also didn't realize it was going to be, 12.8 gigabytes on my phone. That's
Pictures.
That's
a lot of family
That's
photos.
a lot of space.
Yeah, that was a no for me. And having put, I think it was like an hour and a half, like not a ton of time. Having put an hour and a half in, and it was like you have to start over in order to play with your friends. And also anything that I had also already redeemed on that account on that server was burned.
That's
meaning
right.
like all of the customizations that I had unlocked because of whatever account were completely gone and only tied to that first server. I was out. It just made it too hard to play for me.
Yeah. I feel you.
I don't blame you.
There's nothing wrong. You can have that opinion, of course.
Yeah.
I think that it's something that we as gamers are having to reckon with. Like, I complained very loudly, and still do, about the puny hard drive size of the PlayStation 5 and how I constantly have to delete stuff off of it. Did I actually buy an SSD to install? Sure did. Have I sat down to watch a video about how to install it? Nope. Is it still in the box? Yep. I'll get to it eventually. But I shouldn't also have to buy an external hard drive to install aftermarket into my $600 console to play games without having to delete them. It's a frustration.
These companies are hurting for money, okay? They have to cut corners. Otherwise, they're never going to stay afloat. Okay, so I'd ask you to have this conversation with some empathy in your hearts.
You know, I'm sorry, Brittany. I didn't stop to think about the corporation's profitability. That's my bad.
Should.
That's
you
my
should,
bad.
Andrea. Okay, they call you the shill for a reason.
Think
what
of the
have
bonuses.
I become? What have I become? Like, I think I'm gonna have to hang up my shillionaire outfit. Like, who is going to do it now? Like, I don't know.
But no, I'm with you. Like, listen, it's a fun thing, but honestly, after we saw that Diablo 4 footage, I was like, okay, like this Diablo Immortal feels like it's gonna be foreplay that lasts forever, and it never crescendos. It's just gonna be like, okay, we're just gonna do this forever.
It's the
and
appetizer
ever,
course while you're waiting
ever.
for the main meal,
But
and then
it
the
lasts
main
for
meal
a
just keeps
year.
getting delayed because the kitchen
Yes.
keeps making mistakes, and you're like, can you just put the meal on the table? I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm
and I
hungry.
feel like that's it. And it kind of turned me off a little bit from it. So there it sits on my phone, and I probably should uninstall it because that's a lot of gigs it's taking up. But yeah, I mean, so far, I have nothing too negative to say about it. Obviously, Ree, that experience you have sucks, and I probably would have rage quit too. But it's been really fascinating to see the different opinions. Some people are like, "Oh, it's so good, I can't believe it's free," and other people are like, it's a money grab." Opinions.
My thing again. It's not so far. It hasn't been egregious, and again, it's free, so you literally lose nothing by trying it, except for hard drive space. And if you hate it, uninstall it. Boom, you didn't lose anything. That's it.
I feel great.
Cleansed.
I feel ready for Diablo 4.
Yes.
Go.
I think we all are hoping and waiting. But we have more stuff to talk about, but I think we're going to talk about it next week, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out and checking out some video games with us. It's been a Final Fantasy kind of week.
Oh,
Now it makes me want to go play Intergrade. I never finished that.
Dude, I haven't played it either. That's a really good observation in your life, Andrea Renee. Yeah, I need to do that. Whoops.
Yeah,
Listen,
let's do it.
Busy year.
It kind of turns out that we were managing brand new human beings when Intergrade came out. If you recall.
Oh, is that what happened?
Came out in
Allegedly.
June of last year.
Oh, LOL. I remember nothing.
Yeah. It was kind of a blur of, nipples and diapers.
Nipples and milk everywhere, waking up every 2 hours, shit everywhere, piss everywhere. Oh, it was great.
All the fluids.
Yeah.
All the fluids. Yes, from
All the
every hole in
fluids.
our bodies, in our babies' bodies. It was great.
In case you want to know what new motherhood is like, fluids.
Oh,
all of them.
fluids.
Everywhere.
Just leakage everywhere.
Leakage is a very kind way of putting it. Mostly exploding fluids, really.
Exploding gushage.
If only if it was a gentle leak. No.
A gentle drip, like an annoying faucet that needs to be tightened.
Okay, well, this has gotten to a TMI area. Sorry, everybody. This is not how we intended to end the show, but here we are. All right, y'all. We will be back next week. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Gushage.
Squelching.
Squelching.
Oh, my goodness.
Splooging.
All of the words to describe moisture sounds.
Ew, moist.
Moist.
That's such a gross word.